Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram.
Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Sri Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. So, who is reading today? I think it's Swapna Mataji. When are you ready? You can start, Mataji.
Okay, Prabhuji.
Ram Ram.
Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naran Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamati Nashtaprayeshu Patreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama-shloke Bhaktir-bhavati Naistiki. Today we'll be reading from 4th Canto, chapter 28, entitled Puranjana Becomes a Woman in the Next Life, from text 1 onwards. The great sage Narada continued, My dear king, Prachina Barhishat, after the king of the Yavanas, whose name is fear itself, as well as Prajvara, Kalakanya and his shoulders began to travel all over the world. Text 2. Once the dangerous soldiers attacked the city of Puranjana with great force. Although the city was full of paraphernalia for sense gratification, it was being protected by the old serpent. Text 3. Gradually, Kalakanya, with the help of dangerous soldiers, attacked all the inhabitants of Puranjana's city and thus rendered them useless for all purposes. Text 4. When Kalakanya, daughter of time, attacked the body, the dangerous soldiers of the king of the Yavanas entered the city through different gates. Then they began to give severe trouble to all the citizens. Text 5. When the city was thus endangered by the soldiers and the Kalakanya, King Puranjana, being overly absorbed in affection for his family, was placed in difficulty by the attack of Yavana Raja and Kalakanya. Text 6. When King Puranjana was embraced by Kalakanya, he gradually lost his beauty. Having been too much addicted to sex, he became very poor in intelligence and lost all his opulence. Being bereft of all possessions, he was conquered forcibly by the Gandharvas and the Yavanas. Text 7. King Puranjana then saw that everything in his own town was scattered and that his sons, grandsons, servants, and ministers were all gradually opposing him. He also noted that his wife was becoming cold and indifferent. Text 8. When King Puranjana saw that all his family members, relatives, followers, servants, secretaries, and everyone else had turned against him, he certainly became very anxious, but he could not counteract the situation because he was thoroughly overwhelmed by Kalakanya. Text 9. The objects of enjoyment became stale by the influence of Kalakanya. Due to the continuance of his lusty desires, King Puranjana became very poor in everything. Thus, he did not understand the aim of life, was still very affectionate toward his wife and children, and he worried about maintaining them. Text 10. The city of King Puranjana was overcome by the Gandharva and the Yavana soldiers. And although the king had no desire to leave the city, he was circumstantially forced to do so, for it was smashed by Kalakanya. Text 11. Under the circumstances, the elder brother of Yavana Raja, known as Rajavara, set fire to the city to please his younger brother, whose other name is Fear itself. Okay. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you so much, Swapna Mataji, for reading translations today. So, let's go through some of this. I'll start with prayers. Om Ajnanatimmirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chekshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namah Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nitinamani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desatarini Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So it's a beautiful section in one way. This, as you know, overall we're reading the context of Narada Muni instructing King Prachina Barishat in with a help of a allegory. That means some story he's describing of Puranjana that has not really happened to indirectly drive the point home. So sometimes we might have understood this also in life. Sometimes directly telling you are wrong, do this right thing, that is better for you. That doesn't get in. So saintly personalities know when to use what technique in serving others so that they can go closer to Krishna. So Narada Muni is such an expert preacher. So he's telling Puranjana, Prachina Barishat in this case, about the story of Puranjana to explain his own life situation. It's not that he's just keeping it all indirect, as you heard in the previous chapter, is giving information also. Like you, Puranjana did this, like that also, he hinted already. But still, stories help us to be detached and receive the knowledge. If you tell, you did this yesterday like this, that is a problem. So you do this like this. Then the moment I say you did this yesterday like this, it is not good, it is bad, I'll say, oh, I did bad. Oh, why is he talking to me about bad? The defense wall comes up. But the moment it is illustrated with the stories of something that happened, then the defense wall is not there. Oh, he's doing like that? That is bad. Now I only realize that is bad myself. And then I'll see, oh, when he does this, that fixes the problem. Oh, so I can also do like that. Then there's scope for taking the lesson. That's why stories are very powerful and are utilized in spiritual teaching also. Now back to this chapter. Now the context where we are in Puranjana's life is important. The context overall, very briefly, is that Puranjana wasted his most of his life, almost all of his life, with sense gratification, irreligious activities, sinful activities, like that. Now, we also heard in the previous chapters how a soul suffers before birth in the womb of mother, and then, of course, in the previous cantos also we heard this. Then, at the now, how is the particular chapter? This particular chapter is highlighting the fag end of the life. That means old age, and specifically the time very close to the death when there is invalidity also. Okay, so that is the context wherein we are hearing what all he suffered and how was his consciousness at that time while he is suffering in the old age and with invalidity. So that is important for us to capture. So I'll just give the overall essence of this section, then we can dive into the deeper. Overall essence of this section is that how when we live a life of sense gratification without caring for a higher spiritual purpose in life, without caring for devotion service in life, then how the body is in a difficult situation at the time of old age with invalidity and with the diseases and with the threefold miseries coming fully on at that time, how the body is suffering so much and how the soul who is not trained in spiritual consciousness struggles to being still attached to the body and they still want to live in the body without they're very fearful of the death and they don't want to leave the body even though body is giving so much suffering. That is an unfortunate situation. So that is what is being explained in this situation in this section. And interestingly, Srila Prabhupada contrasts it with what we can do while we are living this life before we enter the fag end of the life, old age. So that way we are not in the same situation like Puranjana, but we can be in a better situation with a higher spiritual purpose, and with fearlessness, we can face the death. So that is the parallel. While the storyline itself is telling how somebody leads a life of sense gratification, suffers so much at the old age. That is the overall context. So now, this when we read these sections, we need to be vigilant to understand the problems itself that comes when we don't do what we are meant to do in practicing spiritual life nicely. That is one. Number two, we need to understand the seriousness of old age and death that is coming on us, each of us at different levels. Seriousness we need to understand. When we understand this seriousness of death in such a way through scriptures, then it will bring us the urgency, priority, and context in making right decisions right now at this minute in life, so that we're situated in a better place at time of death. So that is why these instructions are very valuable for us. Now go into the section of verses. We're reading the first 11 verses of this chapter. The chapter is titled Puranjana becomes a woman in the next life. So that title essence will come in the later verses. Essentially, we heard in the previous chapter how Puranjana is always observed and attached to his wife. So because of that, at the end of life, he keeps thinking about his wife. And because of that, he'll get the woman's body in the next life. That is where this chapter is heading towards. Yeah. Now, in the last verse of the previous chapter, what we heard was Prajvara. Um, Prajvara, there's a conversation between Prajvara and the king of Yavanas, Yavana Raja. Yavana Raja is nothing but fear or bhaya or mrityu or death. Yeah. So the old age, Kalakanya, old Kalakanya, old age are in one situation. It's also referred as daughter of time, like that. She wanted to be accepted by someone, and we saw in the last chapter how fear or death accepted it and gave shelter. So now what is happening is that Kalakanya and old age or Jara along with Prajvara. Prajvara is fever that comes at the end of the death. We heard in the last chapter, last verse, last paragraph, last purport. Prabhupada defines Prajvara as a fever sent by Lord Vishnu at the time of death. It's at 107 degrees, he describes like that. That's the final stage of death, basically. So Narada Muni is continuing to describe Prachini Parishat in this chapter. He says, King of Yavanas, who is fear itself, as well as Prajvara, that is the fever we discussed just now, and as well as Kalakanya, who is nothing but daughter of time, or old age, or ill fortune, Durbhagya, like that also is described. So they all, um, along with the soldiers, who are the soldiers? Soldiers are described as diseases that come at the time of death through different gates of the body. They all began to travel all over the world. That means they're always ready to attack. That is the point. So remember, all this is happening in the context of time that is described in the previous chapter as Chandavega. Chandavega is attacking time, like every day, every minute is going like that. So similarly, every day is going, night is going like that. And the time is, as time is going on, Kalakanya will have more and more influence. Old age will have more and more influence. Soldiers, diseases will have more influence on us like that. So in this verse, basically we are hearing before death is very dangerous period, because old age brings its own set of problems. Along with it, diseases also bring their own set of problems. And then Prabhupada also highlights, if somebody is drowning in sex life at the young ages, then he will have more and more problems at the old age like that. That's the point Prabhupada drives home in this purport. Going to text number 2, uh, is described how all the dangerous soldiers attack the city of Puranjana. That means how the diseases attack the body. Then Even though body has so many paraphernalia for sense gratification, and it was being protected by an old serpent is described. This old serpent we heard, how serpent is in the analogy is representing the prana or the life air. So as we got old, the serpent becomes old or the prana becomes weak. So Prabhupada writes in this purport some beautiful things, essentially emphasizing that as the body is utilized for sense gratification more and more and more and more, then the body becomes weaker and weaker, weaker, weaker like that, proportionately. Similarly, the life air becomes weaker like that he describes. And then he describes how the death symptoms appear. Uh, as the death comes sooner, symptoms appear. That is the attack of different diseases like that. And then in this chapter, in this purport, Prabhupada is quoting Bhagavatam 8th chapter 6th verse, which is very significant. Most of you know Bhagavatam 8th chapter gives us the reality of death and how to face death and how is the final exam for us and how we need to cultivate this life to with remembrance of Krishna so that at the time of death we can remember Krishna and we can go back to Krishna. So in that context, Prabhupada is also quoting that verse. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tajati ante kalevaram tam tam eveti kaunteya sata tad bhava bhavitaha. Basically, whatever we're addicted during this lifetime right now, then that will determine what we'll think at the time of death. And whatever our consciousness is absorbed at the time of death, what are we thinking at the time of death, will attain that state. That's what Krishna describes. So now that means our consciousness and how we live life right now is very, very important. So uh, what is that? That basically most people think that I need to enjoy life. I need to live my life to the fullest before I die. That is their paradigm they are in. Because they don't know that we are eternal beings and we have a life after this life, either material life or spiritual life. They do not know that, most of the people. And because of that, they think this life we need to enjoy the fullest, that's it, done. But we need to change our thinking from living before dying to dying before dying. What does that mean? That means preparing for our final exam of death. So dying before dying means actually our we also hear based on our past karma and our desires, we get the next body to fulfill those desires and to experience the karma that we accumulated in this lifetime and the past lifetimes. Yeah, that means we have the opportunity to change what we are doing now to influence what will happen in the future. So that opportunity we can utilize. That is what is dying before dying. So specifically, the desires, our heart is currently, for most of us, our heart is currently impure with the different material qualities of lust, anger, greed, illusion. All these enemies are there in the heart, impurities are there in the heart. And that leads to material desires of different categories. So our mission in this life is to purify these material impurities and uh, with the devotion to Krishna, with the remembrance of Krishna, with the devotion service to Krishna, that will enable us to purify our heart. Not this is the horse. Horse is the devotion service to Krishna. The cart that follows the horse is the purification of the material contaminations that we have in the heart. So in this life, we focus on devotion service to Krishna and purify our heart so that at the end of the life, we are prepared for the final exam of death. So that is the important portion here. I'll go through summarizing the other verses also briefly, and then we'll talk about this theme a little bit more. How do we understand death and how do we prepare for death? How do we utilize this knowledge about death to uh, bring a sense of urgency and priority and criticality in our life of spirituality? So I'll go through other verses first and come back to this main theme. So in the third verse, we are hearing how gradually Kalakanya, with the help of dangerous soldiers, that means old age, with the help of diseases, attacked the body and all the citizens. So, and thus rendered them useless for all purposes. What kind of purposes people are generally looking for? Sense gratification. So it becomes useless because senses are become weak. They cannot enjoy anything anymore. Even if you give some enjoyment for somehow, then they will get even more suffering diseases like that. For example, in the old age, people love to eat more food. But when you eat more food, more problems will come. Digestion is not strong and you cannot handle so much food, so that will bring more suffering. The intention is to get more enjoyment, but causing more suffering like that. In this purport, Prabhupada drives two important themes very carefully. One is, in the childhood, we need to be trained in brahmacharya properly and in spiritual consciousness properly. That means not only we need to be trained, and if we don't get the opportunity, at least we need to train the children that are there currently with a brahmacharya, celibacy, and spiritual consciousness. Why that is important? Because at the end of the life, instead of just being attached to home, family like that, with no thought of Krishna, this spiritual training will help us to conduct our life in such a way that we can remember Krishna and do our duties towards our family and society also nicely at the same time. That is the training Krishna gave to Arjuna. So the training will enable us to do that. And another thing is the training will help us to lead a grihastha life as not as a life of sense gratification, but as a life meant for spiritual progress. And also Prabhupada emphasizes the need for vanaprastha in this purport. That's the second theme. So the vanaprastha means living regular material responsibilities, material life, and focusing more on spiritual life with the husband and wife together doing that most of the time. Of course, there is a Prabhupada also talks about sannyasa later on also. At some point, husband and wife, when they're spiritually strong, then they don't need to live together anymore. So husband stays separately and eventually takes sannyasa also. But in order for that vanaprastha to happen, somebody should have received spiritual training in early life. That is the point Prabhupada connects to the brahmacharya point he makes in the beginning. So now, also Prabhupada makes another point in this section that if you give the proper training for children right now at the young age, even in the middle, they may be swayed away by, oh, I want to enjoy this, I want to enjoy this, I don't have time for spirituality. Even if they go through that phase for some time, but still because they got the proper training in the beginning and they got the practice in the beginning of the youth life, engaged child life, they will eventually come back by Krishna's mercy to the spiritual path, and then they grow from that point very fast. Why? Because now they have practical realization also that grass is not green on the other side. That sense gratification is not bringing me happiness. It only brought me misery. So they go with full swing with spiritual life and then accept it in such a way that they sincerely and seriously grow in spiritual life like that. That's the two important themes Prabhupada writing. That importance of training in the younger age for children, and then importance of leaving the grihastha life to go to vanaprastha at the old age also. Going to the fourth verse, when the Kalakanya attacked the body, they all entered through different gates. So these are early warnings. I don't know you're familiar with this term. Companies work on metrics and early warning indicators that will give us before something has gone too far wrong, we can do something about it. That is the intention. Same thing. Our Krishna has designed this body so perfectly that we get the early warning indicators. Our eyesight doesn't work properly. We cannot hear properly. In fact, my mentor used to tell, we get actually, I don't know if you noticed, the white hair comes around the ear first. In 40s itself, I noticed myself. So that is the first indication hair is coming. Okay, that means old age is coming like that. and then of course white hair, and then in this purport Prabhupada elaborates even more how breathing, nose becomes filled with mucus, so nose is not clear always, and then mouth is not clear always, and then even evacuation doesn't happen so easily. We need support from medicines and surgical instruments for enema, like that Prabhupada writes in the purport. So the point is, as we grow old, we need to take this science seriously to practice spiritual life strongly. Okay, going to text 5. When the city was thus engaged by the soldiers at Kalakanya, yeah, here the highlight is Puranjana was absorbed in affection for family, not in spirituality, absorbed in only affection for family, and that's why he was placed in more and more difficulty by fear of death and also the Kalakanya, old age also. And this purport, um, yeah, Prabhupada writes, the body is becoming a burden because so many diseases attacked now. So there's so much suffering in the old age, like that Prabhupada is writing the purport. Now text number 6. Because Puranjana was too much addicted to sex and he became very, very poor in intelligence and lost all his opulence, like that is described. So the point here is, when the old age and invalidity attacks anybody, when they're addicted to sense gratification, they will lose all the intelligence that they had. That is the point being made here. And then they cannot resist the effects of time, effects of old age, effects of invalidity. Go to the next verse, 7th verse. So, because Puranjana became invalid, he cannot do anything useful basically for the family or society now anymore, because he's not in spirituality practices in this analogy. So now, because of that, because if somebody is not of any value to anybody, nobody cares about them. Everybody becomes indifferent to them. Not only society, but even family members become indifferent to him. That's what happened to King Puranjana, including his own wife, who was spending almost all the time with, who he was so much attached with. But she also doesn't care about him anymore. She also became indifferent to him, like this, in this condition of old age and invalidity. So Prabhupada writes in this purport how in the old age senses and organs are all becoming weak. And then Prabhupada writes the value of human life is to cultivate spirituality and a higher knowledge of Krishna consciousness. So if somebody is instead using the life only for sense gratification, is like a kripana or a miser. Like, I have so much money, but I don't use it for anything. I just keep it in the cupboard, like that. Similarly, we have this higher intelligence in human life. We have this higher capacity to gain spirituality, higher capacity to serve Krishna. But we won't utilize it and use it for sense gratification. That's like a miser, Prabhupada writing in the purport. Text 8. Yeah. When everybody is not caring about him in this old age, he became very anxious and he was lamenting, oh my God, why am I in this condition? Like that. That is the situation in old age and invalidity. Going to text number 9. So he did not, he was continuously engaging in lusty desires. So now he did not understand the aim of life. And even at this condition, when wife and children are not caring about him, still he still is very affectionate towards them, is very attached towards them. So Prabhupada writes an important point in the purport that when somebody is only focused on sense gratification, sense gratification, sense gratification, then they are not suitable for spiritual life. That's the point Prabhupada is writing in this. Because person thinks only about sense gratification. His mind space is not left for any spirituality anymore. So that is the point Prabhupada is making in the purport. Now text number 10. Now King Puranjana was being attacked by Gandharvas and Yavana soldiers is described. So, so he had no desire, even though so many problems are happening because of the body, because of the family members and everything, he was still attached to stay in this body. he still doesn't want to die anymore. That is the level of attachment people develop when they focus on sense gratification as the only goal of life like that. That's the point made in the 10th verse and also purport also. Prabhupada writes a contrast about a Krishna conscious person, Krishna conscious devotee in the purport. Krishna conscious devotee is not fearful of death and not attached to the body. I don't want to die, I don't want to die. Why? Because they already prepared for that final exam nicely by practicing spirituality, devotional service in the life right now. Number one. Number two, they are already confident that either they go back to spiritual world to serve Krishna again, or they'll get an opportunity to serve Krishna in another body, another time, another place and circumstance. So, understanding that they did their best, that is the key point. When we're confident that we gave our best to Krishna in this lifetime, then we're happy with whatever progress we made in spiritual life at the end of the day, at the end of this life. Because we're confident I did the best whatever I can. I cannot do anything more than that anyway. So I do my best. Now up to Krishna, he will give me a right place to practice devotion service again, whether spiritual world or material world. That is the key point. So we should do our best right now, in this minute, in this day, in this week, in this month, in this year, so that we can peacefully die at the end of the life. So the last verse for today, 11th verse. So this verse is describing that Prajvara, that means the final stages of death are coming. That's where Prajvara is coming. Prajvara is the hot fever. Body becomes so hot with fever that they will die, it seems. That means soul leaves the body at that time. So, yeah, Prajvara also set fire to the body, it seems. This So that is a severe heat in the body at the time of just before dying, basically. We'll hear more about it in the next verse onwards. So I want to mention few pointers of what we can take from this section. So one important point we always have been hearing is importance of association of great sadhus, great devotees like Narada Muni. So because of Narada Muni, actually Prachina Parishad is getting enlightened with this Puranjana pastime, number one. And we'll see in the next chapter how he'll perfect his life just because of Narada Muni's enlightenment with his knowledge now. That is one important theme we take for the whole section. Devotee association and hearing from them and applying what they're sharing will help us to lead to perfection. Another important principle is the importance of understanding the value of time we have right now and importance of preparing for the final stages of death. That is how that can help us right now. It's described majority of the people, more than 70% of the people do not write a will. In even myself, I've been thinking about writing a will, writing a will for last 10 years. But still, I don't take it seriously, the death. And it's important financially also for our family members that we care so much, we think that to write the will. Because otherwise government will take the money by default in the America, unlike India. And then family needs to go to the court to spend several tens of thousands of dollars to get the money back. That is number one. That shows the mental attitude of people that they don't want to either think about death or they think I will not die soon. I have a lot of time left like that. That is the attitude we need to change. That I don't know when my death will come. I need to prepare for the death, materially in terms of finances and spiritually to be more confident to leave the body also. Yeah, that is one principle. And then one of the ways to actually this is described in Seven Habits of Highly Successful People, I think it's called. Yeah, that's Stephen. I forgot the other name also now, but Successful Habits book, right? In that book, he interestingly in first few chapters he writes, think about the end. Okay, always start with the end in mind. Okay, that means even in anything we do, we think about what is our goal in this activity, like that, right? And that he explains, think about we already dead now. And people are all assembled at a funeral service, at a memorial service. And then we can imagine who is our best friend who will glorify us after dying. And then when they come to the stage or when they come to the front of the everybody, what will they speak? What will they say? What will they say about my specific personality? Number one. And then what will we say? What are the achievements I made in my life? Of course, in case of devotees, it's material and spiritual achievements. Then what will they say about my seva, my contributions to the society? If you keep this in mind, what do we want them to say? If we keep this in mind, the end goal, then actually we can see in the last week, did I do anything that contributes to these three things? My personality, my contributions to the society, and my achievements. What did I do? If I'm wasting my time in sense gratification, not caring about my life goals, I will not achieve anything much. I will not develop a great personality and character myself. I will not do much contribution to society also. But if I keep that in mind and I have my goals in mind, long-term and short-term goals in mind, then I'll conduct my life in such a way that it will progress towards the goals. So that is one aspect coming from here. Second aspect is like Krishna gave to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, he gave in the second chapter itself, what is our identity? We are spirit soul. When we are clear about our identity as spirit soul and servant of Krishna, and we are clear about our goal of life, which is to develop Krishna Prema, then, and if we are clear how we can be happy in this life and after this life by engaging in devotional service, when we have this clarity in mind, then we can make all decisions in life, all thoughts in our life, all activities in our life in alignment with that higher purpose. So the clarity in purpose is very important. And you have that clarity in purpose, then we can align everything to meet our goals in life. Actually, this is one of the 4 questions in the 4 questions book that His Grace Vaisheshik Prabhu also wrote recently. That clarity in the purpose of life. So now, when I have this clarity, I can also avoid the distractions of external distractions. Like this is blocking me, this blocking me, this blocking me, and also internal obstacles that I have in doing the right thing for spirituality. And when I have the understanding that death is going to come, certainly, no matter what, in few days, few weeks, few years, few months, certainly it's coming, then that can be utilized to develop a sense of urgency, sense of priority, understanding that there are many things that are temporary in this life. All the positions of that I have will not come to me. All the positions I have will not come with me at the end of the life. When I understand the temporality of this, then I can prioritize my spiritual life. And then also the urgency will come. We can overcome the procrastination in life when we remember the death is coming soon. And then when we understand, I cannot stop death no matter what, understand that I'm not in control. Death, God is in control. So I'll develop some humility. That humility helps me to access spiritual knowledge, practice spiritual life. And then the clarity in purpose, clarity in temporality of the things will help me to deal with things and people in appropriate way, not thinking that they didn't talk to me respectfully. Why didn't they talk to me respectfully? My whole life is gone thinking about why they didn't talk to me respectfully. Instead, that's just temporary. That doesn't matter much in this big scheme of things. That clarity will come and help us. And then we utilize this opportunity and not not stay in mediocrity or awareness. Oh, I will do some chanting. Oh, I will do some hearing. That's all. Instead of staying in that mediocrity, we allocate sufficient time for spirituality in our life. Number one, instead of being too busy for spirituality. Number two, instead of being humble, we acknowledge we're not acting as the best version of myself right now. So we always try to improve ourselves in applying it towards spirituality. Instead of being arrogant, we be humble. And instead of always trying to be comfortable, enjoying, peaceful, always being focused on that, we should strive to get out of our comfort zone and strive sincerely and seriously for our spiritual life. Always comfort and aspirations go in opposite directions. Of course, we all need certain comfort to practice and go cultivate goals and work towards our goal. but this should not become our goal. Being comfortable should not become our goal. So we should understand that I should sacrifice little comfort so that I can go towards my aspirations and goals like that. So that is what we can learn from these sections. The importance of this time that we have right now, the importance of uh, urgency, that death is coming anytime soon. With that urgency, we practice spiritual life, so that way we can confidently leave this body when the death comes. We will pause here. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripasindubhya vacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavibhyo namo namaha. Thank you so much, devotees. Hare